Hello and welcome to this special talk show edition of the Newsfeed. I'm Chase Hickman. In today's program, we will be taking a dive into the mental health of students here at Virginia Tech. This topic has become an increasingly central topic of conversation in the world, and Virginia Tech continues to be a part of that discourse. Today, we will take a look at resources cultivated and led by students on campus. What is available? What works? And what needs attention? These topics and more ahead in the show. But first, let's get a check-in with the student body. Earlier this week, we hit the streets of Blacksburg to ask students how they feel about their own mental health and how mental health is perceived around campus.
I think Virginia Tech has done more than a lot of other colleges. I would say they've helped me significantly, I would say, with like resources like Cook, but I think it's more or less the New River Valley area that I think helped me out more. You know, as a person who's known someone in crisis, there are many more resources outside of Virginia Tech than there are here, but the resources at Virginia Tech are very high quality.
I've always been kind of independent. I come from a military family, so I'm used to sort of transitioning and meeting new people. But something that I've learned, like being on my own, is just like how much I relied on community, like for my mental health too. Just like I was alone for just a little bit of time during college, but I noticed like during that time, like when I wasn't around people, my mental health started to like decline. But then I found a place where I could go connect with community, and since I've seen my mental health increase.
Schoolwork is very, very stressful, and like especially when you don't have like the support system of like your family at home, or like you're just like kind of in unfamiliar places.
I feel like we have resources for it, like Cook counseling and stuff, but I tried to get like appointments with them last year, and they were never really available. Like you had to wait for like 3 months in advance, and like if you're struggling, that's probably not the best. I mean, the therapy dogs help a lot. I just like dogs. But I would say that there are resources. It's just difficult to get to them. You have to like think really far ahead.
I would recommend it 1,000 times over. I don't use the Virginia Techs, but I do have my own therapist, and it's helped me in so many ways. I recommend it to anyone. It's so helpful to have someone to listen to you and have that feedback.
For our first guest, we have Ryan Burnett, Secretary for Active Minds at VT. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start by getting a little bit of information around what it is your organization does.
Well, Active Minds at Virginia Tech, we're devoted to mental health awareness and advocacy on the Virginia Tech campus. So we direct our efforts to making sure that mental health concerns are heard, as well as giving students a place where they can learn about mental health and begin to take action in improving the mental health of themselves and their friends.
It's really cool. And what is it in particular that you do for the organization?
I'm the secretary, so I handle new member outreach. Whenever somebody wants to join the organization, that email is sent to me, and it's my job to make sure that they get the emails that the organization sends out. This isn't technically part of the secretary task, but I like just taking on this burden because I enjoy it. I like making sure that new members feel welcome. And if we do any sort of collaborations with other organizations or other people or faculty on the Virginia Tech campus, it's my job to coordinate and communicate that outreach with them.
Awesome. I really can understand the importance of fostering a sense of a welcoming community. Mm-hmm. Particularly with the last segment we just ran. We heard from a little bit of a collection of students around Squires, and we were talking about their outlook on their views of mental health. Mm-hmm. And we heard a lot of different perspectives and voices. How do you think your take is on the general outlook of mental health from these students on campus?
Well, the big thing that people are really, still recovering from is the pandemic. And, that's basically the elephant in the room whenever there's any conversation about mental health, especially regarding students. It's a different situation for every student because for everybody, the pandemic happened in a different way at a different time. For some people, it disturbed their high school years. For some people, it disturbed their college years. For me personally, it was during my freshman year that it started, and then I didn't come back. Well, I had hybrid like online classes my sophomore year, but was definitely not at all the same. And then things weren't really normal again until late junior year. And so people are trying to figure out ways of like, how can I feel like I did again before the pandemic? And I think there's a better way to frame that of like, how can we do better than how we were living before the pandemic? But people want to feel that way they did. They want to feel like socialization is normal, and they don't feel like it's this weird thing that I forgot how to do and have to like warm back up to. And whenever there's a period of isolation or less social contact, whenever there's another wave, as we've experienced the kind of the on and off nature of the pandemic, sometimes students can feel like they learned how to socialize again, and then they forgot, and now they have to learn and socialize again, and it's a cycle. But I think, thankfully, that cycle is seemingly coming to something of an end, because we haven't had any sort of major wave that's disrupted things for several months now, and we've had a mostly normal semester, this fall semester of college all across the country.
Absolutely, and I think we can definitely all be thankful for that. I certainly can understand and relate to the idea that it can be a long-term challenge that comes in these ebbs and these flows. You had mentioned before you had experienced issues yourself in your freshman year. That wouldn't have been at the same time as the pandemic, would it?
Well, the pandemic started for me my spring semester freshman year.
So it did, okay.
For me, my journey with mental health, I would say like when I started really kind of thinking about it was right around when the pandemic started, but it was like late into my freshman year, kind of just before the pandemic, in fact, I became more and more aware of it as I had friends who, were psychology majors and things like that. And I just started to hear more about the topic because it's, nobody really talks about mental health in high school. Like that's just, or at least at my high school, that wasn't something that really got mentioned. None of the students talked about it. None of the teachers talked about it. But then at college, it's a whole different world. It's a very, very normal topic of dialogue.
Absolutely.
And that's only increased since the pandemic.
Yeah, 100%. And I do think it's really interesting to note that this is something that has existed before the pandemic. We actually have a visual to bring up where we took a look at a National Institute of Health study that went on in 2021 and 2020. And they had reported a minimum increase of 60% students meeting the criteria for at least one mental health problem, which is a 50% increase from 2013. And a lot of that might be attributed to the coronavirus pandemic, but that increase was over time from much before that. In your experiences, how do you think, as you mentioned, the specific stressor of the COVID pandemic has sort of started to simmer down? Do you think that that reflects the trend of the overall mental health that you see on campus in your line of work?
Okay. There's kind of two ways of thinking about this. The first is that rates of reported mental health are increasing, or reported mental health issues are increasing because it is becoming normalized and it is more common. People are more likely to seek out help and report it. They might be more aware of the fact that they're experiencing mental health issues. The other way of thinking about it is the somewhat more pessimistic way of thinking about it. And I'm not an expert, so I don't know which one is true or more accurate, but it's that things are indeed getting worse. And that might be the case, but I think that there's far more opportunities than there's ever been. We have the most opportunities right now at this day and age to talk about mental health and to seek action to help yourself and your loved ones and friends with it.
Well, that's a really, really reassuring thing to hear. I really want to continue this line of conversation, and we will, but first we're going to take a quick break. Coming up next on this special talk show edition of the Newsfeed, we'll take a look at a special guest with the Virginia Tech Therapy Dogs and learn how they help students in their own way as well. So we'll see you back after this short break.
There is a road laid out for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
You leading down to the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
What do you think?
I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free, take me down to the river and walk.
Welcome back to this special edition of the Newsfeed. I'm your host, Chase Hickman. As we've heard, Cook Counseling offers many resources for students, one of them being the PALS program. PALS stands for Peer Assistance for Learning. This is a volunteer-based program led by students and for students. These volunteers assist in outreach programming on Cook Counseling Service. They also present programs to educate their peers on stress management, how to recognize signs of anxiety and depression, building healthy eating and sleeping habits, and adjusting to college. So here with me today, I have our special guest from PALS. This is one of the leaders and mentors herself, Kate McCarthy. How are you doing today, Kate?
I'm good. How are you, Chase?
I'm doing quite well myself. I wanted to get in real quick and talk about our a little bit of an understanding around what it is you do at PALS and what it looks like to be a mentor for that organization.
Yeah. So I have been at PALS for 2 years now. I joined when I was a sophomore because I wanted to educate students on campus about mental health. A little bit of what we do is we go around and we educate students about things that you said, PowerPoints on stress eating, difficult eating habits, sleep disorders, and we also hold booths at Gobbler Fest and at other organizations on campus in order to have those in-person connections and communications with students also on campus. We're kind of like the mediators for the counselors at Cook Counseling who have PhDs and are more than qualified to educate and assist students with their mental disorders, even if it's not a mental disorder, even if they just need someone to talk to. And we kind of are the middlemen for students on campus and the counseling center. Personally, I enjoy talking to students the most when I'm able to see them face to face and talk to them at a booth. But yeah, we do a lot of PowerPoints, booths, and in-person communications so the students feel welcomed and they feel like they have a place to talk to in the counseling center.
Well, it's a really admirable pursuit to really focus on that kind of engagement and liaison between what you might call the faculty and the students. When you are in that position, I feel it's very likely that you see a lot of the nature of the engagement between those faculty and those students, being that middleman, as you said. Do you think that students are taking enough advantage of those resources available?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really it comes down to us about educating what resources we do have available on campus. We actually just Virginia Tech came out with a new resource called Timely Care, and anyone at Virginia Tech with a Virginia Tech email can access 24 mental health counseling and health services on this app. It comes down to if you're seeking help, you can't force someone to get help. But if someone comes and is asking for help, it's very easy to supply them with resources. I think the students on our campus, especially since after the pandemic, coming back after being on your computers, it's been harder for them to communicate with people and ask for help. Once they do, our resources are there for them. In order to make it more prevalent, I absolutely think that we could be louder and bolder about all of our resources and talk more about it.
Absolutely, and it seems, with our previous guest, Ryan, it's really hard to avoid the topic of the coronavirus when we talk about this kind of outreach and the added stress of it. There is another study that we have up to put on the full screen here that shows, it's no secret, it's been a really big deal. And in this study, we discovered that students display over a 70% increase in anxiety and stress that they attribute to the outbreak, and over 80% report an increased concern in their academic performance in general. Do you think there are any specific ways that you have seen in your experience that this particular issue has really created a unique problem for these kinds of students, faculty, and whomever else?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I definitely think being isolated for a long amount of time is not healthy for anyone. So having to be with your family or not be with your family and be by yourself has caused people to feel stress and anxiety and even some depression. I think the reason we're seeing peaks of anxiety and depression is because of education. And like Ryan said, we're learning more and more about mental health every day. New disorders are being studied, and we're doing as much as we can to understand how we can help people with these disorders. But I think the lack of education is really what is bringing people down. I think we need to explain what the issue is and then provide those resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so an interesting challenge I see coming up in that sort of situation when you really need the ability to successfully execute an outreach in order to educate these kids. You had mentioned that one of the biggest issues that COVID had brought up was the isolation. Is there any way that you guys have tried to address that problem in your efforts to get bigger and bolder with educating?
Yeah, so I like to make personal connections with my mentors, my mentees, the people that I'm trying to provide resources for. I like to make personal connections with them. Providing empathy is my number one goal in all of my interactions with students on campus. I think listening and understanding and actively helping them tell me what they need help with is one of my main concerns. But I think when you kind of do a lecture in front of an entire classroom of people talking about sleep habits and eating disorders and anxiety, you're going to have those folks that are on their phones and are not listening. And so I found that the one-on-one interactions of let's talk about this and then let's move forward and see how we can help has been more helpful than being in front of a large group of people, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So to go off of that, face-to-face is clearly important. But it doesn't always necessarily need to be with a human being. Cook Counseling Center offers, not only mental health resources, but they also offer a chance to spend companion time with animals. And they can be spotted in different areas around the campus and are frequent visitors to study spots in classrooms. Eric Wagner and Moose are a part of Virginia Tech's efforts to relieve student stress. The initiative started in 2012 and has since inspired other schools to invest in companion animals for students. Senior Bethany Wilburn describes how animals have impacted her college experience.
I'm an animal and poultry science major with an emphasis in companion animals. In my classes, I have learned that companion animals can really help people when they're struggling. I've seen the therapy dogs around campus, and their presence really helps brighten the mood.
Students interested in seeing the therapy dogs can find their doggy office hours at VT. Therapy Dogs handle on Twitter and Instagram, as well as the Cook Counseling website. And Kate just informed me that unfortunately Moose has passed away. So while we are really sad about that, they do have other animals that are still available, but I just wanted to make sure that we paid our condolences before we move on to the next segment. So coming up next on this edition of the Newsfeed Talk Show Edition, we'll learn about the importance of mindfulness and practice of short meditation together. Stick around after this short break.
The family's visit to the forest inspired a beautiful question. Mother, mother, am I a tree? You tell me to stand tall. You tell me to stay rooted. I think I am a tree. My child, of course you are. But what kind of tree will you be? The kind to hug or the kind to climb? Doesn't matter what you choose, so long as you choose to be a tree that's kind.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to this edition of the Newsfeed. Mindfulness is a practice that allows for us to be in the present moment. Many meditation specialists suggest that mindfulness practices can help reduce feelings of stress and anxiety. So, as promised, we're going to be practicing a brief mindfulness meditation led by Virginia Tech student and CoRU certified specialist Lily Harding. Lily believes that meditation can be quick and easy to incorporate in your daily routine. Take it away, Lily.
Hi everyone, welcome to a 1-minute meditation to calm the mind and body. Meditation is super simple and can be done in just 1 minute. So first, we're going to do 3 cleansing breaths. You're going to make your inhale be a deep belly breath and then an audible exhale. Let's inhale and exhale. Second breath, inhale and exhale. Last one, the deepest breath of the day. Inhale and exhale. All right, now let's get into our meditation. First, we're going to find a meditation position. This can be laying on the ground, sitting upright in a chair with your feet on the floor, or sitting cross-legged and on a couch like me, or on the floor, whatever you please. Make sure that your spine is up tall, and let's begin our meditation. So close your eyes or glance forward slightly down. Focus on the breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Notice where the breath enters the body, where it fills in the belly, and notice as it leaves the body, as the breath exhales out of your nostrils, out of your belly. Notice the feeling of the floor on your feet or your legs. Feel the sensations of your clothes against your body. Be curious about what it feels like. Feel the cold air against your skin. Feel the heaviness of your hands in your lap. Now come back to the breath. And when you are ready, open your eyes. And at the end of all my meditations, I love to take a deep stretch, like I'm waking up in the morning. Whatever your body feels like doing, do that. And enjoy the rest of your day and relaxation.
We thank Lily for her guidance through that meditation. Now joining us once again are both Katie and Ryan. Thanks for hanging out with us a little bit longer. So to start, I wanted to just kind of give a brief reflection on some of the stuff that we've started to cover today. After seeing the kinds of resources, even with talking with each other before the shooting and looking at, the outlook that students have, therapy dogs, mindfulness, how do you both feel being part of this network? And how do you feel about yourselves in the sense of what you have sort of started to contribute to the efforts to help with the overall impact of mental health on campus?
Yeah, I feel like I'm making that impact on campus, but we could be doing more. And I think post-graduate, when I leave here, I'm going to be continuing these efforts and continuing to educate students of all ages, young adolescents and old people about every sort of resource that we have available in this country, because there's so much that we could be doing more. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And Ryan, how do you feel about what you've done at Active Minds?
For me, it's very self-fulfilling. It makes me feel like I'm doing something important and good for the world, or at least the Virginia Tech campus. I think that the biggest hurdle for us to overcome is we have plenty of mental health resources. There's many different options for students to seek out. The main issue that stops a lot of students from seeking it out at all, though, is that they just don't know about them. They haven't heard about them, and that's really our job to make sure that they hear about them.
Absolutely. Well, that's something I'd love to talk more about. It seems, that these are available resources, and it seems that there's a lot of really motivated people such as yourselves who are doing as much as they can to try to get more information out there. Is there anything that the school can be doing outside of what the student groups are engaging in that really could help you guys push forward and get more people to listen?
Well, it's that stigma, right? Like, people on campus and students see the word anxiety and they see the word depression and they say, oh, I don't have that. I'm fine. I might be anxious before an exam, but I'm okay. And that might be true, but you still are feeling certain mental blocks and issues that you can seek help with. And I'm not saying let's put everyone who has a mental disorder in a complete category. And if you have anxiety, you have to do this. If you have depression, you do this. But it's that stigma that I think sometimes, and this is a generalization, older generations don't fully understand the extent of mental health in young adolescents just because it wasn't as prevalent when they were younger. So yeah, I think that the older Virginia Tech community could be educating themselves more, and we could be educating them more. But I think it's the stigma that we really need to work hard towards breaking.
Absolutely. Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Do you agree with the stigma notion?
I do. One thing that Active Minds we worked really hard on is a syllabus statement that professors have the option currently to put into their syllabus, usually at the end, that basically informs them of various mental health resources on campus. And the professor, by putting the statement in there, basically it has a promise or a vow of like, if you need access to these resources, either I will help you or I'll make sure that they can help you. Like the professor will be a guide for them to reach those resources. And currently that's only optional. We're hoping that at some point in the future, Virginia Tech will make it so that that's mandatory for all professors, and that's just on every syllabus for every class.
Absolutely, and I feel like that feeds into the disconnect that Kate was mentioning about how there might be generational stigmas, not just the stigma around the concept itself. One of the things I also wanted to bring up was, is there anything that you feel as organizations, since we've talked a little bit about what the university can be doing, is there anything that you want to see students themselves doing in terms of ways that they can start to change their own outlook as they are sitting on the fence of considering whether or not this is even a resource that they need to explore?
That's a good question. Personally, I think PALS can get in contact with more diverse groups on campus. Right now we're in contact with El Centro and the BBC and the LGBTQ centers. And those honestly are groups on campus that need a lot of more help because of, they might not have access, they might not have the money that they need for the resources. But since Virginia Tech offers all free therapy, it's an easy, convincing statement. You don't have to pay anything. We have it right here laid out for you. I think students themselves can be more proactive. I think if you are going through something, trauma, an eating disorder, sleep issues, the resources are there for you, right? You can't force anyone to come to therapy. You can't force anyone to listen to you. And I truly believe if people need help, they will reach out. But just being open with your friends and empathizing with your friends and listening to them, validating everything that they're feeling, and encouraging them to seek help if you think they need help.
Absolutely. I really think that that is a great message to end on. So from there, I wanted to thank both of you for joining us today. We hope everyone at home learned a little something. I know I certainly did. I feel like there's a lot more resources for myself to take a look at for my own mental health. With that, I wanted to wrap everything up. If you have a story idea or even a talk show idea for the newsfeed, let us know. You can send us an email at thenewsfeednrb@gmail.com. And as always, you can connect with us at the Newsfeed on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. I'm Chase Hickman. I wanted to thank our guests, Katie and Ryan, again.
Thank you.
Have a great day, and thank you so much for helping.